Hello and welcome to this episode. Today we consider the divine conception and birth of Buddha. It's one of the major religions in the world, with about 500 million or so believers or worshippers. Now, this Buddha was born as Siddhartha Gautama between probably 563 to 483 BC, according to one account, and between 448 and 368 BC in another account. So essentially, he lived between 400 and 600 BC. He was born in northern part of India, in a place which is now part of southern Nepal, in a place called Lumbini. He was born to a king's house. His king, or the king that was his father, was King Suddhodana or Shuddhodana. And according to historians, Buddhism therefore existed between 6th and 4th century BCE. It was founded around that time. The exact date is a bit uncertain. But the man, Siddhartha Gautama, did actually live. He is a historical figure. I focus today on the story or the legend of his birth. According to Buddhist mythology or legend, he was born by Queen Maya or Queen Maha, who was the wife of King Shuddhodana. Before his birth, the mother, Queen Maya, had a dream. In that dream, 4 angels carried her onto a mountain, on the top of a mountain, and clothed her in that place with flowers. So as she lay down on top of the mountain, a white male elephant came to her carrying a white lotus flower in his trunk. Then this elephant walked around the queen 3 times and then struck her by the side and disappeared into her. So apparently this was a strange dream, a divine dream. So the king called the soothsayers of the land to interpret this dream. And they gave this interpretation to the king. They said to her that the queen would bear a son. And this son had 2 potentials for greatness. First, if he stayed in the palace of the king and grew up as a prince, he would become a great king. On the other hand, if he were to leave the palace, he would become a great spiritual leader. So greatness on the kingly side, or greatness on the spiritual side, was his destiny. And then he was born. How was he born? Now, according to Buddhist legend, when the time for the birth of the child was near, the queen, the mother, requested that she be allowed to travel to her father's house or the town of her own birth, as was customary. And she was allowed to do so. As she was traveling to the town of her birth with her royal entourage, they came upon a place, upon a grove with a lot of blossoming flowers. And she asked to be allowed, she asked that they rest in the place. And then when she touched one of the flowers, she gave birth. Now she gave birth not in the normal way people give birth. Instead, she gave birth, or basically, the child came out of her side, came out of her right hand side, the right hand side of her body, of her stomach. So the child wasn't born in a normal way. It came out. And not only that, when the child came out, the child stood on his own feet, took 7 steps, and spoke. So this child wasn't a normal child. He was born walking. He was born speaking. And what did he say? He said, and I quote, "I alone am the world-honored one. I alone am the world-honored one." So this child, therefore, wasn't a normal child. He was born able to stand, able to walk, and able to speak immediately. Some legends also claim that when the child was born, upon coming out from the side of the mother, the earth shook, rivers stopped flowing, flowers fell from the sky, and the lotus flowers sprang up in the exact place he first stood. The mother died 7 days after giving birth, and leaving the child, therefore, in the care of her sister, who also was married to the king. So the child was born in a very extraordinary, unprecedented way. Very supernatural birth and conception. Okay, let's now speak about the life of Buddha. Now remember, in the interpretation of the dream of Queen Maya, they said if the child stayed in the palace, he would become a great king. But if he left the palace, he would become a great spiritual leader. The king did not want his only son to become a spiritual leader. He wanted him to become a king after him. And therefore, he took steps to make sure that this young boy did not leave the palace. He fortified the palace, didn't allow him to step out of it, and provided all kinds of luxury for him to stay in the palace. And for some time it worked. The child Gautama stayed in the palace. But when he grew up, he wanted to leave the palace. And despite orders and efforts of his father, the king, he was able to leave the palace. And as he ventured into the town, he saw different kinds of people. He saw the rich, he saw the very poor, he saw the old, he saw the beggars, he saw those who died, he saw all kinds of. So basically, he saw the reality of life, which is different or was different from the life in the palace. He decided to stay out of the palace. So he came out of the palace, renounced the luxury of the palace, and decided to live the life of an ascetic or the life of a poor person, wandering without food, without money, thinking that perhaps that is how to live life. Fasting, not eating, basically subjecting himself to suffering. But he wasn't very satisfied with his life. He followed teachers who lived this kind of life, but eventually he left them and decided to eat a bit, not much. So he chose what he called the middle way. Not too much suffering, not too much poverty, and not wealth either. So he lived an ordinary life and sought spiritual and growth through meditations, through other things, fasting, and other kinds of spiritual discipline. In the course of this, he was tempted by the devil with different things, including with beautiful women that failed. The devil tempted him with threats of attack from demons and all sorts of things that also failed. So Gautama overcame all the temptations, and in the course of his meditations under a tree, he basically achieved enlightenment. He became awakened, understood the nature of existence, and therefore became a Buddha, which means the enlightened one. So, how does the story of Buddha relate to the story of Jesus? As was clear in the narrative, Buddha was the product of an asexual conception. The legend didn't say she was a virgin because she was, after all, married to the king. But the conception of the Buddha was different, in the sense that an elephant entered her womb and conceived her. This elephant was a divine elephant that came from heaven. Now, Buddha was not born like a normal child. His birth was not only foretold, but he was occasioned by wonders, just like the birth of Jesus was said to be occasioned by different wonders and visitation by the wise men and attempt by Herod to kill him and all those things. In the case of Buddha, he was born with supernatural ability. He was born standing. He wasn't born normally. He came out through the side of the mother. He walked immediately upon touching the ground, and he spoke immediately. No child in history has done this. Now, like Jesus was said to have done, Buddha renounced wealth and luxury and lived an ordinary life, mixing with ordinary people, wandering about, without a roof to call his own, even though he came from a palace. That was the kind of life Jesus was said to have lived. Now, Buddha also was tempted by the devil in different ways, which temptations he overcame. Just like Jesus, who was said to have been tempted by the devil in the wilderness for 40 days and 40 nights, and which temptations he overcame as well. Buddha lived the life of a wanderer, a poor person really without much wealth. So he basically eschewed wealth, just like Jesus also did, because he said, you cannot be his follower unless you renounce everything that you own and give them to the poor and follow him. So what conclusions can we draw from this narrative? Well, the first conclusion is that all religions that have a founder, that has a master at the top of it, have mythologies around them. They have legends around them which confer on them divine or extraordinary or supernatural existence and status. The aim being to elevate them above normal people or persons. And this mythology comes in different forms, including virgin births, divine births, miraculous births, as we've seen in the case of Horus in Egypt, Saoshyant in Zoroastrianism, Mithras, in the case of Mithraism, and now in the case of Buddha for Buddhism. Even though Buddha was a figure that lived, the legend of his birth is not historical. The mythology of his birth is not historical. And so is the mythology of the birth of Jesus, of the birth of Horus, of the birth of Mithras, of the birth of Saoshyant, and of the birth of other lords and saviors of different other religions. This means then, if you're a Christian or a Muslim or whatever religion, Jew, or the myth of your religion and the founder or savior of your religion is not unique. There are similar myths from other religions older than yours. And probably your mythology was learned or copied or syncretized from pre-existing myths of older religions. So if you believe in the myth of your religion, in the myth of the savior of your religion, then you have to also believe in the myth of the savior or founders of other religions. If you reject one, you must reject others. If you reject others, you must reject your own. Therefore, the moral of the story is that all religions are man-made, and all the mythologies and legends are man-made, just to confer a veneer of divinity and specialness on people that founded different religions. Buddha himself warned against being worshipped. He himself, there are many philosophies and teachings of Buddha which actually are worthwhile and which are natural philosophies by which we can live a good life. But the myth about his birth is exactly that, myth. Thank you for watching. Until next time, bye.